Most of us, moving through our lives, try to find the easiest way, because and our brain is doing this constantly without our full, and without us being fully invested in it. Our brain is always looking for the easiest way. And the easiest way is a way that is expedient, but not necessarily appropriate to or in balance with the longest term best interest of the organism. And so each of us, in engaging in our expedient behaviors, make choices which may conserve energy in the short term but block us from more abundance in the long term. And as we live, in that case, as we grow up, and we bump into this experience over and over again, what we develop about ourselves is self-doubt. It is this self-doubt that builds up in us to the degree that we simply stop fully engaging our environment and in our life, because we have come to the conclusion that we are inadequate to the task, and the only thing that will take place for us is disappointment.
Is there a healthy time to have self-doubt at all in our lives?
No.
To question? I don't know if
Self-doubt and questioning are a little bit different, aren't they? They're not the same thing. To say that, I wonder if there is a more appropriate way to get from point A to point B, is reasonable, and like now these days we have Waze on our phones, or to guide us along our traffic route in case there's a faster way to get someplace or to avoid a bottleneck. And how wonderful, we don't engage in Waze out of we don't put on Waze because we say to ourselves, I doubt my ability. We simply understand that there could be a bottleneck in the road, and we have a tool to help us avoid it, so we engage that.
What's that fine line between self-doubt and healthy questioning, discernment?
The thing is this: as long as you're stuck in self-doubt, then you're not even going to make the effort really to engage in any kind of healthy discernment. And self-doubt, is a self-perpetuating pattern that blocks us from connecting with our creative energy, releasing tensions, and allowing our creative energy to flow. To surrender self-doubt is not to become overflowing with confidence. It is to be connected in the moment to the flow within yourself and in your environment. And automatically, out of that connection, rhythmic, balanced interchange ensues. Whether it be on a physical level, in the arena of health and and wellness, or on a spiritual level, where it is wellness. And then, we have many tasks that we engage in a day. Some of the tasks, we respond to out of self-doubt. We have developed patterns of response, that are expressions of our compensation for, our own self-doubt. And those compensation patterns endure for an infinity.
So we can apply this model even to the mundane daily tasks.
I mean, our mundane daily tasks are an expression of, for the most part, our acceptance of a large amount of self-doubt, and which at the same time undermines our ability to, fully experience the abundance that is our essence.
I self-doubt around my ability to memorize things.
Perfectly reasonable. Perfectly reasonable.
So is there something I can...
You're over 40 and you're taking on, a PhD program that you're starting from scratch and doing in 3 years. I'd say that is a completely unbelievable amount of memorization that you have committed yourself to doing, and hell yes. When we talk about mundane things, I actually doubt my ability these days to walk from Kathmandu to Lhasa. People do it every day. Some people, probably some Tibetans my age, might even do it every day. But I doubt my ability, and that's probably completely reasonable.
So there's not
I certainly
something...
doubt my ability to sail, a boat from here to Japan. I doubt my ability to sail a boat from here to Vancouver, because I've never sailed a boat before.
So self-doubt can be a healthy and appropriate response.
That's not really the kind of self-doubt that I'm referring to.
Okay.
Is it like me thinking, oh, I'm a terrible meditator, I'll never get this, I'll never be enlightened, I might as well just like...
How is that different from me saying I'm a terrible memorizer, I'll never get this, I'll never...
Yeah, it's not different. The only difference might be that, to say you're a terrible meditator is an open-ended statement. To say you're a terrible memorizer is only relevant in the context of your PhD program, which goes on for 3 years. And if you get through it, if you get through the program and you get your degree, it won't matter if you were a terrible memorizer or not, because you still got through even with that limitation. The inability, our inability to approach our lives with a sense of openness and wonder, and an ability to take in experience, process it, appropriately, and learn, is our inability to have that kind of life is a function of our self-doubt.
Would the opposite of that be courage? That's when you're saying this, I'm thinking it takes courage not to stay with.
Well, here's the
path.
way I feel about it is that everybody leaves the easiest. The only reason a person would ever leave the easiest path is because it proves to be, not that easy after all. That it turns out to be more painful, So, I mean, the reason why I engaged in a spiritual life is because I came to the complete appreciation that the ordinary life was more painful, in fact. And more, even though it wasn't more work on one level, the work of it wasn't just staying alive in a state of profound boredom, and complete cynicism is excruciating to the degree that we suffocate our capacity to feel at all.
So do we have to have a degree of faith to be able to disengage in self-doubt?
I don't think it's really an issue of faith at all. The reason this came up was in relationship to people who do spiritual practice. The statement was the biggest obstacle to our spiritual development that I see, and the boundary between, a beginner and a practicing, self-cultivating person is how we handle self-doubt. And what I was saying is that it is really essential that we begin to, we use the term surrender, to release our self-doubt. Because that contraction, causes a shutdown in our circulatory mechanisms, our subtler circulatory mechanisms for sure. And it is an engagement of a mental model of the world that is inappropriate to our life and inappropriate to our task of growing spiritually.
I mean, like you're saying, it's the most profound thing that limits our practice.
It is the obstacle.
Right. So,
And it is the obstacle because it denies us connection to the unimaginable possibility that is present inside us. There is this so-called rational mind that wants to make a picture of the world that is manageable, for us, in our time and place and with the set of expectations that we have. Of course, time, place, and expectation are all a function of self-doubt. And so, when we encounter doubt within ourselves and we have the level of personal development, in other words, we have the presence of mind to observe that self-doubt is arising, and in that moment, rather than embracing self-doubt, if we were to feel our body and find our breath, and very simply, just for a couple of, 30 seconds, quietly release that self-doubt and allow our mind to shift to, a state of openness, then it is, infinitely more likely that we are able to learn something and discover a whole new range of possibility within ourself and within the field of experience that we're relating to. And if we embrace the self-doubt and engage that and simply start saying no, or yes to some constipation. So, this isn't rocket science. And I think so much of the conceptualization around the question, and is it this, is it that, really, comes from self-doubt. The important part about raising the issue is to begin to think about self-doubt, to be aware that it is a powerful factor that is shaping every aspect of our daily lives. And if we can, moving through our day, release that self-doubt with our practice, then the likelihood that we are going to start to have much more meaningful and informative life experiences is, increased by orders of magnitude. To some degree, self-doubt is intrinsic to our physiology because all of our choices, emerge within us out of an enormous amount of conflict that's going on in our brains. And that does give rise to self-doubt. But it is when we begin to acknowledge self-doubt as an operating principle in our daily lives, that in time we will get to the fundamental, root of self-doubt, how it is that self-doubt can be established in us in the first place, given what we are in the environment that we operate in. And, we create the possibility that we can come to a completely different understanding of ourselves. An understanding which is more sophisticated, nuanced, more richer, more abundant than, the simple desire that we have for simple stories and black and white answers, of which there are none. We, each of us individually, are a function of turbulence. Well, because we are turbulence, I can't say, it's not appropriate to say how we navigate turbulence, because we are turbulence. It is how we engage and embrace the turbulence that we are and the turbulence that is life. And to come to a place where, you are completely flowing within yourself in the turbulence that you are and the turbulence that is your life, really allows for the fullness of the abundance to be manifest as, the curtains of light that, we are and we play in. I think it is a part of an awakening to come to a place in ourselves where we say, I am, for instance, I am Shiva. To come to the recognition that we are the ultimate reality might on the surface sound like we're making a very arrogant statement. I'm God. But in fact, what it is an appreciation that the particles that compose this body, the molecules, their structures, the atoms in the molecules and the particles in the atoms, all the way down to muons and gluons and quarks and, all of this is what I am. And the boundary between this and this and this and this is completely imaginary. Space is the illusion of separateness. But in fact, everything, the entire universe is a continuity in which all of the denser expressions are touching each other. Everything is touching everything else. So to say I am Shiva is simply to appreciate the completely temporary and to a large degree illusory nature of this physical body and the mind that is a function of this physical body, and begin to recognize that we are a profound and living awareness that permeates the whole. And residing in that awareness, our experience of life is completely changed. When you are filled with joy on a regular basis, when you have elevated yourself beyond the anguish of self-doubt, and you are filled with joy, all of your neural reward systems are transformed.
In that state of no self-doubt, you're always filled with joy?
Yes, dear. And to say you don't have self-doubt doesn't mean you know everything. That even Shiva would never say, I think I don't know everything, because there is a dimension of Shiva, which even he cannot, reflect upon, get behind to intellectualize. That dimension of Shiva is the goddess, and that creative power has complete autonomy and total capacity to manifest anything.
And I won't be sad about the things going on in the world that I see that break my heart.
I mean, of
tragic.
course we should be, how can we not be sad about the shit going on in the world? We're human beings still, and and however abundant and however incredibly amazing our lives are, and we have like unbelievably amazing lives. However amazing it is, that doesn't mean that we don't like anguish over the unimaginable stupidity that goes on, say, on television during a presidential debate these days.
Because in fact, it almost like I feel like as I awaken, as that self-doubt goes, as we get more clear with our interconnectedness that you just described, those are the times and places where I feel everything,
Right.
including that pain and suffering.
For instance, when a patient comes into you, you're a classical Chinese doctor. When a patient comes into you, you as not a very experienced classical Chinese doctor may say to yourself, I don't really think I can treat this. But an experienced practitioner who's had some success over time will look and say, I'm not exactly sure right this minute how to engage this particular circumstance, but, I will engage it, and in time, I will dissolve it. I will transform it. So, and it's like a person comes to me in need. I look at people, I think, I can deal with this. I've got no problem with it at all. It will be resolved. I don't have the idea in my head that I know everything about it all right this second. I don't even need to know. All I need to know is that if I engage each and every person in my environment in the dimension of abundance, wellness and health that is present from within me, and I engage, from that dimension in me, that dimension in everyone in my life, it'll be fine. And the reason why we have this completely incredibly amazing life is because that is so. And self-doubt is the obstacle. Whether it be self-doubt that emerges because somebody says, oh, I'm not the best student and therefore I blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, I have a lifestyle that, I'm committed to, which doesn't facilitate, whatever the excuse, whatever the psychology and the mental framework, that mental framework has to be released. Oh, I'm not healthy and so I can't blah, blah, blah anymore. Or, oh, I'm just not that kind of person and I can't do that kind of work, or whatever. Well, I don't walk around saying, oh, you have to be this, or you have to be that, or you have to be anything at all, do I? I say, the only thing we have to do is be liberated from self-doubt. Which doesn't mean we become stupid and ignorant and knuckleheaded and engage in some kind of arrogance. Life every day is a surprise, it is a wonder. It's a wonder that we survive it, but it's completely amazing. And, we are here to learn from life, not to, close our minds and imagine that somehow the turbulence that, is within us is equal to the turbulence that is around us, because that's just not true.
How about the opposite of self-doubt being self-love? Where people...
Yeah, that's great. I mean, when we talk, and this is another sort of a separate topic, but people talk about loving themselves. I've got to love myself. Well, of course that's really hard when you're full of self-doubt. But even if you're not full of self-doubt, understanding what loving yourself is like, well, loving myself is not, I'm going to love myself, I'm going to the spa. I'm loving myself, so I'm like taking 5 years off.
Well, there's the same nuances to it as using the word doubt.
To say, I love myself. Loving ourselves is another very simple thing. When we love ourselves, we are doing one thing, and that is opening our hearts. Opening our hearts is the one and only act of true self-love. When we connect to the love in ourselves, we are loving ourselves. When we go to the spa, maybe we're relaxing our body, that's a nice thing, and possibly that might be a stepping stone for some of us to opening our hearts, get some of the tension and crap out of our bodies. But real, true self-love is opening our hearts. And that is an experience of beauty and sweetness that transforms us completely, because from a neurological point of view, it is completely reordering all of the reward systems that our behavior is, all of our decision trees in our brain are based on, and we are releasing ourselves from the duality of pleasure and pain to transcend into the dimension of contact, alignment, and flow. As an example, I have this experience with Rudy. I go from Bloomington, I go to New York, I'm with Rudy. It's completely amazing, totally, and it it totally rearranges me, and it, in large measure, released an enormous amount of self-doubt from me. I come back to Bloomington, I have $5 in my pocket. I know, I had a few friends there from before, but I'm not really in contact with anybody. I arrive, here I am. Within a week, I have 12 students and a house that I bought. Within 2 weeks, I have 25 students, a house, and a restaurant that was given to me. Within another month, I have 50 students and a bakery that we opened out of the restaurant that was given to us. And it goes on like that. The point being that because I didn't have any doubt, because there was simply openness and flow, all kinds of things were popping all over the place, and it was very amazing and beautiful. In our lives, as we train ourselves to let go of our self-doubt and open, what we'll discover is that, an abundance that is appropriate to, our development unfolds itself each and every day of our existence on each and every breath. And now we're old. We're much older. And what is appropriate to us in this time in our lives is different than what was appropriate to us then. But whether or not we were totally absorbed in, totally limited by our self-doubt in some ways, everybody I know in the ashram from the early days who stayed with it has accomplished some extraordinary things in their physical lives, more than they could have ever expected otherwise. And so at each stage in our life, even if we do a little bit of work, there is a kind of, creative expansion that happens, even in spite of our self-doubt, that endures. But if we look back on it and we see, we reflect upon the whole experience, what we understand is that abundance is, and it operates to the degree that we allow it to. Now, in this later period in our life, really what we want to do is simply dissolve ourselves into light, and there's no issue, there need be no issue about ability. There only needs to be the issue of doing so. You know? So let's free ourselves from any thoughts like, I'm not a good meditator, I'm not a good student, you know, I'm not a this thing, I'm not a that thing, I'm whatever. I mean, all of that kind of self-doubt just has to be released. There's a lot of wonderful people here who've done a lot of wonderful work over a long period of time, and you know, we have an amazing life. And you know, yes, the world is crazy and insane and dangerous, but you know, we live in an orange submarine. Self-doubt and self-love, you know, I mean, we shift from self-doubt, which is a state of closedness, to self-love, which is a state of openness. And it is really completely simple. And if you practice, you should be able to simply discriminate within yourself the difference between those two states. And when we have to start thinking too much about anything, then it is undoubtedly an expression of self-doubt. And that self-doubt completely suppresses all of the wonder that is possible for us and available to us to experience moment to moment.
I love it. Thank you guys for joining us on News from the Heart. May you find self-love and release all self-doubt.
Hallelujah.